Today we are reviewing the professional profile of Mohammed Alattas. He is a versatile expert based in Jeddah, Saudi Arabia, with a deep background in business, human resources, logistics, public security, and artificial intelligence. Mohammed is recognized for leading initiatives that advance justice, simplify daily life, and foster sustainable economic growth. Currently, Mohammed serves as a founder of Alattas, established in May 2024. In this role, he is developing a global digital democratic governance and economic system alongside a social and healthcare organization. Since September 2019, he has also been the founder and advisor of the Akrana organization, delivering innovative education on Social Security fundamentals. His professional journey includes significant roles such as logistics officer at Otis Elevator Company and logistics coordinator for the BMW Group, importer Mohammed Youssef Nagy Motors. In these positions, he mastered fleet management, import operations, and complex data systems. His experience also extends to HR and administration, having served as an HR personnel officer at Scamco and an administrative assistant at BT Applied Technology. Mohammed possesses a highly modern skill set, including project management, strategic planning, and no-code programming. He is particularly proficient in leveraging AI for work art and web applications. His qualifications are backed by a PMP certification and specialized training in the elements of AI for business from the University of Helsinki. He also holds professional freelancing licenses in public relations and sales management issued by the Saudi Ministry of Human Resources. Beyond his corporate expertise, Mohammed is a prolific creator and author. He has innovated the Errata book, containing over 40 world-changing ideas, and has authored multiple scripts and stories. He developed a comprehensive civilization curriculum featuring 25 foundational majors, and has even produced an album of over 160 educational art songs. Mohammed is currently seeking a part-time opportunity where he can apply his diverse talents to contribute to a forward-thinking organization while funding his long-term mission.
All right, let's jump straight into it. Welcome to today's Explainer, where we're cracking open a pretty complex document known as the Amrelyon case dossier. This isn't your everyday complaint, folks. It's actually a highly structured, formal petition put together by a citizen named Mohammed Abdullah Hussein Alattas. And basically, he's found himself stuck in what I can only describe as a decade-long legal and medical limbo. Over the course of this Explainer, we're going to unpack exactly what this dossier is all about. We'll look at his pursuit of basic administrative transparency, the completely objective contradictions he's up against, and the really methodical way he's trying to clear his name.
So, here is our roadmap for the Explainer. First, we'll cover a decade of administrative limbo, then documented procedural gaps, followed by contradictions in medical reports. After that, we'll dive into his petition for transparency and wrap up with the three-phase resolution. We're strictly looking at the official records here today, acting as your objective guides.
Section 1. A decade of administrative limbo, or 10 years of systemic dead ends.
10. That is the sheer number of years Mohammed has been stuck navigating this wild bureaucratic maze. Over 10 years. Just imagine that. For a whole decade, his life has been defined by canceled lawsuits, cases just bounced around between different authorities with zero resolution, and to top it off, an unstable psychiatric label that he absolutely disputes. Imagine hitting a systemic dead end for that long, where literally every official channel you try just slams the door in your face and nobody even tells you why.
And you know, the real-world impact of hitting that kind of bureaucratic wall, it's severe. It's way beyond just annoying paperwork. It's about a person's actual livelihood. The dossier maps out how this total lack of direct communication has just completely derailed his social and professional life. We're talking major developmental projects he was leading, like the Akrana organization, just totally stalled. He's basically left stranded with halted progress and a massive sense of injustice.
Section 2. Documented procedural gaps and unexplained legal cancellations.
Okay, let's look at the hard data here, the actual lawsuits he filed through the Ministry of Justice's official Najeez system. We've got request numbers filed in the criminal and general courts in Jeddah, seeking private rights and damage compensation against the Supreme Court and the Saudi government. But here's the kicker. The status for every single one of these? Canceled. These records are objective proof that he played by the rules. He used the official channels, yet he ran into this huge procedural black hole where his cases were just dismissed without any official explanation whatsoever. Which brings us to a really human moment in all this data. This is a direct quote from his formal petition to the Emirate of Makkah region. He writes, "The Ministry of Justice cancels all cases I file. I can prove them. I only want my case to be accepted in court." He isn't even asking for guaranteed win, you know? He just wants basic legal access. He literally just wants his day in court. It really shows he's trying to escalate things properly through the Emirate, looking for justice, not a fight.
Section 3. Contradictions in medical reports and the case for neutral reevaluation.
So let's compare his official medical diagnoses side by side. Back in 2019, at the Psych Expert Center, the diagnosis was bipolar disorder. Fast forward to 2024 at King Fahd Hospital, and suddenly the diagnosis completely flips to schizophrenia. These are two incredibly different clinical diagnoses, both sitting right there in his official file. When you look at these conflicting records neutrally, it is glaringly obvious why he's demanding a comprehensive, completely neutral medical reevaluation. I mean, the entire foundation of his administrative identity is built on this massive contradiction.
And to complicate things even more, he had a third, totally separate medical consultation in 2024 at Dr. Irfan and Balgado Hospital. There, a senior professor gave him a completely new set of treatment recommendations. So now we've got this constantly shifting landscape of medical opinions. The dossier rightly points out that this level of contradiction doesn't just look like a simple mistake, it creates an absolute, undeniable need for institutional clarity.
And the bureaucratic fallout from these records is very real. There's an official disability support request logged right there with the Ministry of Human Resources, so the system officially recognizes him as needing financial disability support. The paper trail is there, the label is firmly attached, but the actual underlying medical facts, those remain completely disputed.
Section 4, a petition for transparency and the citizen's diplomatic stance. When you read his personal perspective in the dossier, his tone is super specific. He is 100% confident in his mental stability. He completely rejects the idea that he has any internal psychiatric disorder. Instead, he points the finger at a culture of indirect communication and a total lack of transparency over the last 10 years. He even says he's ready to pass any medical, psychological, or functional test you throw at him. The big takeaway here? This dossier is a diplomatic petition. He's not throwing wild accusations around. He's just asking for clarity, fairness, and a neutral review by the administration.
You can really see this diplomatic approach in what he sent to the Al-Nusra police and the Emirate. He says, "This case must be resolved by higher authorities. I am not mentally ill as some claim. My goal is justice and fairness." He's also asking to be compensated for all those disrupted projects we mentioned earlier. He's clearly signaling that he wants a peaceful, authoritative resolution. He's practically begging higher authorities to just step in and look at the facts.
And that mindset perfectly sets up his actual strategy. In the dossier, he says, "I would not have created this plan unless I was 100% certain of my internal stability." This isn't just a guy saying he's sane, it's the kickoff to a highly methodical, step-by-step game plan he's built to finally clear his name once and for all.
Section 5. The three-phase resolution plan covering medical, diplomatic, and legal action.
Phase 1 is the medical plan. The goal here is to establish his mental and functional stability definitively. And look at how scientific his approach is. Step 1. Request a completely neutral committee from the Ministry of Health. Step 2. He's actually volunteering to take some of the most rigorous clinical tests out there, specifically the MOCA, WIS-5E, and MMPI-2, alongside executive function tests. Step 3. Take those new results, compare them against the old, conflicting ones, and issue one single unified medical report that goes straight to the Ministry of Justice. It's a purely scientific fix for a massive bureaucratic headache.
Then we move to Phase 2, the diplomatic plan. The objective is to respectfully open official lines of communication. Step 1 is sending a formal letter to the Emirate of Makkah. Step 2 is sitting down with the Human Rights Commission to show them all the official documents. Step 3 is asking to form a joint committee to review his entire case. Through this whole phase, the dossier keeps things respectful. No accusations, he just wants a dialogue.
Finally, we get to Phase 3, the legal plan. Here, the goal is to secure his fundamental right to litigate, which, remember, has been inexplicably blocked for years. Step 1. Refile his case, but this time, he'll be armed with that new, unified medical file from Phase 1. Step 2. Formally request compensation for the damages to his life and projects. Step 3. Bring in an independent legal advisor and escalate it to the administrative court if the system still tries to block him. This whole final phase relies completely on getting that clarity in the first two steps.
So, what is the ultimate why behind this whole 10-year saga? Well, the dossier lays out these core goals. Transparency about why those cases were canceled, justice for a decade of a stalled life, scientific evaluation to finally sort out those contradictory medical files, and ultimately, protecting his administrative and legal rights. This isn't just about one man disputing a diagnosis. It's a really profound plea for a functioning bureaucracy and basic human rights within an administrative system.
Which leaves us with a really pressing question. How exactly should a legal system respond when a citizen presents undeniable contradictions in their official records and simply asks for a neutral review? The Amrelyon dossier offers a peaceful, structured off-ramp to a decade-long dispute. Whether the system actually takes that off-ramp, well, that remains to be seen. Thanks for joining me on this explainer today, and remember to keep questioning the systems around you.
Welcome to the Explainer. I am so thrilled to have you here today because, wow, we are looking at an absolutely fascinating and highly complex situation. It's known as the Amrelyon case. Today's explainer is going to be an objective, entirely administrative review of one man's decade-long pursuit of justice. We're going to look really closely at the case of Mohammed Abdullah Hussein Alattas. He's a Saudi citizen who has spent literally more than 10 years navigating the legal, administrative, and medical systems of his country, all in this massive search for transparency and accountability. We'll be examining the primary source documents, looking at the exact claims being made, and exploring what actually happens when administrative processes just break down. So let's get right into it.
Okay, let's dive into this. Our agenda today covers 5 parts: an introduction to the Amrelyon case, a decade of documentation, patterns of institutional silence, proposed structural legal remedies, and finally, a call for public transparency.
Part 1. Introduction to the Amrelyon case.
To truly understand this situation, we need to view it as way more than just a personal grievance, right? It is constitutional and religious in scope. We literally have to look at the legal foundation of Saudi Arabia itself, where the constitution is the Quran and the Sunnah. And the Saudi constitution, based on the Quran, is incredibly straightforward. It simply says, "Do not spy." The source material points out that unauthorized surveillance is presented here not just as a privacy violation, but as a direct, fundamental breach of Islamic law, the Saudi constitution, and human dignity itself. Mohammed asserts that he's been subjected to continuous unauthorized surveillance, and that individuals around him have consistently referenced private matters they should have absolutely no way of knowing. By grounding his complaint in this constitutional text, he is really elevating the whole case. It goes from a personal dispute to a massive demand for fundamental constitutional rights and due process.
Part 2. A decade of documentation. Now, what's really interesting about this is that when someone claims their rights have been violated, the very first question is almost always, okay, where's the paperwork? Well, the procedural reality here begins back in 2014, when Mohammed reports first experiencing unusual behavior, indirect communication, and severe social and economic isolation. Over the next decade, we see a totally methodical escalation. He didn't just jump straight to the top. No, he actually followed the administrative ladder rung by rung. In 2016, he filed local complaints to the Emirate of Makkah. By 2020, he escalated his appeals for a hearing through the Ministry of Justice and the Naji's judicial portal. And by 2024, after completely exhausting domestic avenues, he sent submissions all the way to the International Criminal Court. This timeline brilliantly demonstrates a citizen meticulously trying to engage with the system at literally every possible level, from local police to international bodies. And this brilliantly illustrates the sheer volume of procedural evidence gathered over 10 years. We are talking about a massive paper trail here. Over the years, Mohammed submitted formal submission confirmations from the Emirate, official Naji's case records, Ministry of Justice filings, police reports, and even receipts of his ICC submissions. And that's alongside medical reports and personal timelines. He has submitted all these documents openly, desperately attempting to trigger a formal investigation, or at the very least, just secure a simple interview.
Part 3. Patterns of institutional silence.
When we zoom out and objectively contrast the two sides of this case, a really stark administrative gap appears. On one hand, you have Mohammed requesting standard legal due process, right? Things like public hearings, formal investigations, and witness interviews. Yet the institutional response was basically just a pattern of total silence. Complaints were simply ignored, court cases were canceled, often without any explanation or proper review whatsoever. The system completely failed to provide the basic mechanisms of justice that were being requested.
But honestly, the administrative silence wasn't even the most concerning part of all this. The core assertion of this entire case is that instead of granting legal hearings, authorities directed Mohammed to psychiatric institutions. According to the source documents, he was literally labeled mentally ill without any actual evidence.
psychiatric intervention entirely replaced legal due process. Mohammed asserts that he was subjected to forced injections and forced to take pills without proper evidentiary justification, and to top it off, he was explicitly told not to file further cases. This raises some incredibly profound questions about the misuse of psychiatric authority as a tool to just silence administrative complaints.
Part 4. Proposed structural legal remedies.
Let's move to and see how this builds, because Mohammed didn't just document his own administrative nightmare, he actually used it to design systemic solutions. He methodically connected each specific institutional failure to a corresponding global project. For instance, where he experienced a lack of community support and justice, he proposes Akrimna, which is a platform designed for peace and ease. Where he encountered a total lack of transparency and accountability, he proposes Al-Nas, a unified global civic platform. And to directly combat that severe misuse of psychiatric authority we just talked about, he designed Al-Mudir, a global chain of command system. These platforms are quite literally engineered to fix the exact vulnerabilities that derailed his own life.
So the crucial point is understanding how a system like Al-Mudir actually works in practice. It is a structural global chain of command system explicitly designed to prevent the exact pattern of abuse we were just looking at. By creating really clear authority lines, transparent decision-making, and rigid accountability mechanisms, Al-Mudir ensures that a citizen cannot simply be swallowed up by institutional silence. But maybe more importantly, it creates structural protections against the forced misuse of psychiatric power. It basically demands verifiable legal evidence before medical labels can ever be used to dismiss a person's legal claims.
Part 5. Call for public transparency. After 10 whole years of closed doors and canceled cases, Mohammed launched an ongoing public petition, basically demanding open legal transparency. The source material notes something super important here. Mohammed has witnesses who privately acknowledge the situation but are terrified of speaking publicly due to potential retaliation. So, to safely gather evidence from witnesses who fear that retaliation, this petition is hosted on akrimena.org using highly structured, completely non-coercive rules. It allows for the voluntary submission of written statements and the secure uploading of document evidence. There is absolutely zero forced testimony here, and the petition makes no direct accusations against specific individuals. It's really a brilliant administrative workaround, specifically designed to safely gather evidence from government employees, institution workers, and everyday citizens who have knowledge of the case but fear institutional blowback.
And what is all this meticulous evidence gathering actually for? Well, it all leads to the ultimate demand. Mohammed asserts that he has never lied, that he has been entirely consistent for 10 years, and that he has submitted all of his documents openly. His consistent 10-year request really boils down to one simple thing: a public hearing. That's it. He is demanding the basic right to present his testimony openly, the right to call his witnesses without them fearing for their safety, the opportunity to finally correct his psychiatric record, and the chance to formally review the administrative negligence that has defined his case.
I want to leave you with a final, pretty serious question to think about. If the systems designed to protect us substitute medical labels for legal justice, how can true due process survive? This case is a profound warning about what happens when administrative silence becomes the default and medical authority is used to bypass constitutional rights. It really challenges all of us to look closely at our own institutions and demand the transparency and accountability that Mohammed Abdullah Alattas has spent a literal decade fighting for. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and I really hope this deep dive into the source documents has given you a much clearer understanding of the Amrelyon case.
Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're taking a monumental 400-plus hour educational syllabus and transforming it into an exciting step-by-step roadmap for lifelong learners. We're looking at a highly structured, self-directed system known as the Civilization Curriculum. It's this ambitious project that curates over 1,000 free educational videos into one cohesive, track-based badge of completion.
So how do you actually build a civilization right inside your own mind? It's a huge question, right? Well, today we are breaking down a massive, globally balanced curriculum that's designed to give you a fully realized, multidisciplinary education. We aren't just talking about reading a random article here or there. Oh no, we're talking about a systematic, start-to-finish roadmap that covers literally everything, from ancient historical foundations and artificial intelligence, all the way down to how to properly cook a meal.
47. That is the actual number of distinct subjects you're going to master on this journey. The curriculum is designed to leave absolutely no stone unturned, effectively building a well-rounded human being from the ground up. But let's be real, looking at 47 subjects all at once, that can be completely overwhelming. And that's exactly why this roadmap is so beautifully organized.
To prevent cognitive overload, we're chunking those 47 subjects into 5 highly digestible pillars. We've got 1. Foundation in religious sciences. 2. Expansion into applied sciences. 3. Expression through sports and arts. 4. The capstone lifestyle skills. And 5. Your timeline.
All right, let's kick things off with Part 1, Foundation, Religious Sciences, Building the Ethical Base. We're diving right into this first phase because it establishes the absolute bedrock of the curriculum. The creator of this program chose to begin with ethics, spirituality, and historical religious foundations before ever touching the hard sciences. This first pillar is made up of 8 specific subjects.
What's really fascinating here is the philosophical balance. It combines comprehensive Islamic history, ethics, and texts like the Quran, classical tafsir, Bulugh al-Maram, hadith wisdom, and Ihya Ulum al-Din. But it sets them right alongside global foundational texts, explicitly including the Torah and the Gospel explained by the Bible Project. It's this fantastic dual-lens approach to the spiritual and historical narratives that have shaped human civilization. You're looking at 131 to 163 hours of focused learning across these 8 subjects. It perfectly sets your spiritual and ethical tone before moving forward. This foundational pillar requires a serious time commitment, you know? It's really about establishing the base camp before the big climb.
Moving right along to Part 2, Expansion, Applied Sciences, the Intellectual Core. With our ethical base camp established, we completely shift our focus toward the practical, intellectual, and technical skills you'd actually need to run a society.
These massive 27 subjects form the intellectual core, and they're grouped into 5 main categories. You're going to learn languages, focusing heavily on grammar and vocabulary. You'll study medicine, touching on everything from anatomy and nursing to dentistry and natural pharmacy. Then you jump right into engineering and technology, covering physics, mechanical engineering, artificial intelligence, robotics, and cloud networking. Finally, rounding it all out is management.
235. The absolutely crucial point here is that this single pillar is the heaviest lift. It takes up to 235 hours to equip you with the practical, functional skills of a civilization. Think of it as the core intellectual engine of the entire curriculum. It demands the absolute most rigorous focus.
Next up is Part 3, Expression, Sports, and Arts, Mind and Body. Because a true civilization isn't just about logic, data, and hard sciences, right? It absolutely requires universal human expression. You just can't have a fully formed society without physical health and creative storytelling. This wave contains 11 total subjects designed to activate both your body and your creativity.
We're looking at universal physical disciplines side by side with the creative arts. The sports side demands cardio, strength training, self-defense, and team sports. The arts side perfectly balances that out with songwriting, singing, learning an instrument, storytelling, acting, and public speaking. And what's great is the curriculum specifically utilizes respected global sources like TED-Ed for storytelling and Justin Guitar for music training to make sure you're getting top-tier instruction. This adds roughly another 100 hours to the journey, perfectly balancing the mind and the body. You're going to spend about 30 to 42 hours sweating it out in sports, and then 43 to 59 hours refining your creative voice in the arts.
Now we hit Part 4, the capstone, lifestyle skills, completing the human being. After 46 intense subjects spanning religion, science, and the arts, we arrive at the 5th and final destination. The creator of the curriculum specifically separated this final topic to serve as a clean, symbolic ending to the massive educational system we've just navigated.
This single subject is the ultimate capstone of the curriculum, and it's a beautifully grounded, totally practical requirement for human survival, cooking, and culinary skills. Using resources like Basics with Babish, this final 5 to 7 hour stretch is designed to build independence and connect you to culture. It's honestly the perfect, practical anchor to bring you right back down to earth after studying things like quantum physics and classical history.
When you weigh these 5 pillars against each other, it reveals a truly balanced mind. The massive applied sciences block sharply contrasts against the tightly focused lifestyle capstone. The foundational religious sciences tick up a really significant wedge, while sports and arts provide perfect symmetry.
506. When you add up the maximum estimated time across all 1,107 individual videos, you are looking at up to 506 total hours of dedicated learning. That is the grand total to conquer all 47 subjects. It's a pretty imposing number for sure, but as we're about to see, it is entirely manageable when you break it down into a daily habit.
And that brings us to part 5, your timeline to completion, the execution of the roadmap. You now know the terrain of the entire curriculum. So let's translate those raw hours into a highly actionable daily strategy. I mean, having a roadmap is totally useless unless you actually know how to drive on it, right? So let's look at exactly how long this is going to take you in the real world.
Here is your ultimate start-to-finish tracking map. It lets you clearly track your progress and see exactly how the 47 subjects form a complete educational ecosystem. We're talking 8 subjects for Pillar 1, 27 for Pillar 2, 4 for Pillar 3, 7 for Pillar 4, and that final capstone for Pillar 5.
The absolute most practical takeaway here is flexibility. Seriously, even if you only dedicate 1 single hour a day, in 13 to 17 months, you will have completed a journey most people never even attempt. If you bump that up to 3 hours a day, you can finish in just 4 to 5.5 months. And if you treat it like a serious part-time job at 5 hours a day, you'll be done in under 3.5 months. So, the roadmap is fully quantified and laid out right in front of you. You have the pillars, you have the 47 subjects, and you have the exact timelines. The only question left to answer is, how fast you want to run toward the finish line. Will you take the steady 1-year path, or are you going to go for the aggressive 3-month sprint? The power to literally build a civilization in your mind is now entirely in your hands. What speed will you choose today?
All right, let's jump right into this explainer. If you are tuning in right now, it is highly likely you've just been elected as a leader on the Almadir platform. So first of all, a massive congratulations to you. You have stepped into a position of genuine authority. But, with that authority comes a highly structured system that you absolutely need to master. Today, we're going to break down exactly what your new role looks like on a daily basis, running through your administrative toolkit, and figuring out exactly how you fit into the global chain of command. Now, everything we're looking at today really anchors back to this one foundational rule from the platform: no one can escape responsibility. I mean, Almador's entire philosophy is just built on this bedrock of accountability. Literally every single command you issue through this system is legally recognized, recorded, traceable, and fully accountable. As a leader, you are always responsible for the commands, and the person receiving it always knows it's 100% official. There is absolutely no ambiguity here. And honestly, that's what protects both the platform itself and you.
So, let's lay out our roadmap to get your leadership toolkit up and running. We will hit 5 main areas today. 1. The Almadir hierarchy. 2. Elections and leadership. 3. The 7 universal commands. 4. Your admin toolkit. And finally, 5. Reports and escalations.
Starting off with Section 1, the Almadir hierarchy, moving from local to global. Because hey, before you can govern your own group, you kind of need to see where you actually sit in the bigger picture of the platform.
Think of Almadir as this massive, continuous bottom-up chain of command. It all starts at the local level with your group, and that could be a family, a stored-up team, a huge corporation, or literally even a city. But you definitely don't exist in a vacuum. Every single group sits right under a higher group. It creates this nested hierarchy of accountability that scales all the way up to the ultimate global group. So, as the elected leader, you are the crucial bridge. You are the link connecting your local members directly to the tier right above you.
Moving right along to Section 2, Elections and Leadership, your path to power. Let's briefly look at the exact mechanisms that validate your status as a leader.
As you know, to even enter the leadership arena and run for an elected position, you had to put up a candidacy fee of exactly $40 or its equivalent in Karam service bonds. And why do they do that? Well, it's not just a simple paywall. It's actually a filter. It ensures that anyone running for leadership is genuinely invested in the immense responsibility they're about to take on. And once you paid that fee, you had to actually win the room, right? On Almadir, every single member holds 1 vote. And this is wild. That vote is changeable at literally any time. So to earn those votes, candidates build a multimedia presentation. Sure, it relies a lot on text, but you can really supercharge your campaign with an optional video recording, an image, external links, or even supporting documents. You literally had to master these exact tools to convince your group to hand over those changeable votes to you instead of someone else.
All right, Section 3, the 7 universal commands. These are your primary instruments, the real meat and potatoes of your operational toolkit.
These 7 commands are basically the lifeblood of the platform. You've got your everyday drivers, things like task and information commands, plus democratic decision commands that actually trigger a majority vote. But then you have the heavy hitters, financial, authority, restriction, and emergency commands. And whenever you issue one, you can pack it with multimedia elements, just like your campaign presentation.
And remember our whole theme of accountability? Yeah, every single command, response, and note comes with an immutable edit history. The system logs exactly what a command was at every single point it was changed. That means you and your members always have a perfect, undisputed record of what was actually said.
Now, what's really fascinating here is how the system hardwires a strict pace into your leadership. You aren't just shouting instructions into the void, the system actually sets a ticking clock. Routine tasks and information commands give people a 72-hour timeline. But look at financial, authority, or restriction commands, those tighten right up to 48 hours. And if you have to drop an emergency command, action is expected within just 1 hour. Meanwhile, a decision command stays open until a true majority votes. So choosing your command type isn't just about what you want done, it's about directly managing the operational tempo of your entire group.
Which brings us nicely to Section 4, your admin toolkit, looking at boundaries and powers. The absolutely crucial point here is drawing a hard line between what everyone can do versus the exclusive powers that only you hold.
Let's stack them up side by side. Standard members, they can issue basic tasks, share information, and kick off decisions. They can respond, report issues, and vote. But the second you step into your domain as a leader, the toolkit just expands dramatically. Only you can issue those heavy-hitting authority, restriction, emergency, and financial commands. Only you get to approve join requests, manage the group's rulebook, and hide abusive interactions from the rest of the members. Essentially, your authority kicks in exactly where standard permissions end.
And to juggle all of this, you're going to live inside the admin panel. It is your daily command center. From your main dashboard, you'll be processing incoming commands and escalations to keep things running smoothly. You'll handle really vital identity verification stuff, literally checking national IDs and passports to stop fraud in its tracks. You'll also use this space to manage the rulebook, dig into platform analytics, and set up admin delegation. It is a massive, comprehensive suite designed to give you total oversight.
But listen, there is a very specific catch when it comes to delegation that you need to be hyper-aware of. The platform has this built-in safety net called automatic delegation. If you, the primary admin, end up ghosting your responsibilities and stay inactive for 30 days, the platform steps in. It will instantly promote your total delegated user to act as the primary admin, because Almadir will absolutely not let a group stall out just because of an absentee leader. Now, the moment you return, you get your authority back, but it's a pretty stark reminder. Your leadership demands active participation.
And that naturally leads us to our fifth and final section, reports and escalations, the safety net. This just brilliantly illustrates how the platform handles disputes, making sure that absolute power is always balanced by real oversight. Let's actually track how a problem travels through the system. At hour 0, a command or response is created. If there's some sort of violation, a user has exactly 48 hours to officially report it. And as the group leader, that report lands right on your desk. But if you can't resolve it, or, and this is important, if you are the one being disputed, it can be escalated after 72 hours directly to the higher group sitting above yours. This is exactly where that hierarchy we talked about at the start comes into play. There is always a higher authority ready to step in and issue a final ruling. Now, when you are handling these messy reports, you do have the power to hide abusive interactions from your standard users, just to maintain a decent environment. But, circling back to the very first thing we talked about today, accountability. You've got to remember that absolutely nothing on Almadir is ever truly deleted. There's no suspension, no freezing accounts, no escape. Sure, an abusive comment might disappear from the public feed, but it remains permanently locked in the immutable audit logs for you, the higher admins, and, if it ever comes down to it, legal authorities.
So, there you have it. You now understand the massive hierarchy you're a part of. You know exactly how to wield those 7 universal commands and manage the ticking clocks attached to them. You've seen the serious firepower waiting for you in your admin panel, and you know exactly how the safety nets of reporting and escalation work. You've got the tools, you've got the power, you've got the oversight. The system is completely ready for you. So the only question left to ask yourself is, how will you lead your group today? Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and seriously, best of luck in your new role.
Welcome, investors. In today's explainer, we're popping the hood on a cream of bank and a truly revolutionary alternative currency. Look, if you're watching the landscape of global finance right now, you know we're at a massive inflection point. We are all searching for stability, for real, tangible value, and honestly, for systems that actually make logical sense. So today, I'm going to walk you through a framework that aims to completely redefine how value is generated, secured, and exchanged.
Okay, let's just dive right in by challenging the very definition of money. This is a concept that fundamentally changes how we perceive global economics. Think about it. Right now, value is often derived from, well, arbitrary printing by central banks or the massive energy-burning computations of crypto mining. But what if we tied currency directly to the most fundamental, universally recognized unit of value on the planet? Actual human labor and service. What if a currency could literally only be minted when verified human service is actually performed? That is the exact premise we're exploring today.
So here is our roadmap for today's pitch. We're going to cover 1. The alternative currency vision. 2. Securing exchange with digital bonds. 3. Valuing service using the formula. 4. Scaling work through multi-user allocation. And finally, 5. Managing liquidity with the PEB.
Section 1. The alternative currency vision.
Think about traditional fiat currency for a second. It can be printed at will, right? Often with absolutely zero direct backing, which leads to the rampant inflation and volatility we're seeing in global markets today. Now compare that to the Karam currency model. This system operates under what's known as a strict creation constraint, meaning the system technically prevents the creation of new Karam unless it is tied directly to verified service. There are no magic printing presses here, no arbitrary quantitative easing. Every single unit of this alternative currency represents real work that has actually been completed.
The core asset you are looking at investing in is the Karam Service Bond, or KSB. Now, you might be wondering, how do you value an alternative currency globally without it just being subjected to wild forex swings? Well, you anchor it to reality. The KSB uniquely ties its value to real-world living standards through a global equilibrium. The standard is set so that 10,000 Karam exactly equals the basic monthly living expenses of the user's specific country. This is huge because it creates an inherently stable macroeconomic environment where the currency's purchasing power remains relevant and consistent for the end user, no matter where they live in the world.
Moving right along to Section 2, Securing Exchange with Digital Bonds. Let's walk through a quick case study of a standard service provider transaction. If you've ever dealt with the frantic, sweat-inducing countdowns of modern gig apps, you're really going to appreciate how this workflow entirely removes those stressful elements. Step 1, the requester must define the hours and the hardship level up front. Step 2, and this is absolutely crucial for verification, the provider has to physically present a national ID or passport to the requester before starting. Step 3, the work is done without a ticking live timer, which fosters quality over just rushing through a job. And finally, Step 4, the requester must manually trigger the confirmation to release the digital funds. It's deliberate, it's secure, and it's a deeply human-centric workflow.
But obviously, an economy can't just exist on a screen, right? To bridge the digital and physical worlds, Akermena Bank allows users with a positive balance to actually generate and print physical Karam service bonds. These can be used to buy real goods or services entirely outside the digital system. The receiver then simply uses a verification and deposit feature, punching in the bond's unique hash or ID to transfer that value right back into their digital wallet. All of this is protected by strict end-to-end encryption for identity documents. Plus, those cryptographic hashes make double spending literally impossible.
All right, Section 3, Valuing Service Using the Formula.
Here is where the math really shines. To mathematically guarantee fair pay, the platform uses this exact calculation. When a custom service request is made, we don't rely on arbitrary haggling. We use this. Total Karam equals the hardship level divided by 80, multiplied by the actual working hours, plus any associated costs. Simply put, compensation is mathematically tied to the specific difficulty of the labor and the precise time it takes to complete it. It completely removes the friction and awkwardness of price negotiation from the service exchange.
And where does that hardship level come from? It pulls directly from 3 standardized tiers. Easy work sets the standard at 10,000 Karam per month. Medium work doubles that to 20,000, and hard labor triples it to 30,000. By plugging these standardized inputs into the formula we just talked about, the system ensures equitable compensation across the board. A worker performing hard manual labor is mathematically guaranteed to earn their proportional share compared to someone doing easier administrative tasks, regardless of the service type.
On to Section 4, Scaling Work Through Multi-User Allocation.
Now you might be wondering, does this scale? Is it just for individual gig workers? Absolutely not. A single payment can be automatically split, fully supporting multi-user allocation. This means complex business logic, like routing 50% of a payment to team salary A, 30% to team salary B, and 20% to a partner business share, is handled natively within the system. You can use percentage-based or fixed-amount logic. This kind of API integrity means enterprise organizations can literally build their entire payroll and partnership structures directly on top of the Karami economy.
And finally, Section 5, Managing Liquidity with the PEB. This is the big one for institutional investors: liquidity and cashing out. Fiat to Karam exchanges are securely held in what is called a public exchange budget, or PEB. To protect the macroeconomy from bank runs or sudden capital flight, withdrawals are governed by a really elegant equitable limit formula. A user's withdrawal limit is equal to their percentage of global Karam holdings multiplied by the currently available PEB. This mathematical governor ensures that liquidity is always distributed fairly based on your actual stake in the total economy. It completely stops any single massive whale from draining the fiat reserves.
But wait, there's more on the security front. Your investment is safeguarded by remarkably strict governance protocols. There's a transparent 20% monthly tax built right in, which funds both the platform service fee and national funds, ensuring government collaboration rather than regulatory friction. Disputes? They aren't handled by automated bots. The system relies on admin-assigned human judges. If a user actually commits fraud, they face labor restitution. That means they must perform verified service to clear their negative balance. How novel is that? And in a true worst-case scenario, the primary admin holds a global free switch to instantly pause operations, backed by the ability to generate printable physical ledgers for a total offline system backup.
So as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with one final thought. We've looked at an alternative global currency that isn't based on wild speculation, but on verified human service. We've seen the digital bonds, the proprietary math that guarantees fair valuation, the enterprise-level scaling capabilities, and the ironclad liquidity and governance controls. The technology is here, the math is completely sound, and the opportunity is waiting for you. The only question left is, are you ready to invest in an economy where fairness is mathematically guaranteed? Thanks so much for walking through this roadmap with me today.
Hey everyone, let's jump right into this. Today, we are looking at an incredibly fascinating system called Akromna Bank. But right off the bat, I want you to forget everything you think you know about traditional financial institutions. We aren't talking about checking accounts and loans today. Based on our source material, Akromna Bank isn't just a bank, it's a universal work engine designed to fundamentally break the very concept of unemployment. It's a system built to give everybody an opportunity to work and provide service as much as they need and want.
Here is our roadmap for today's explainer. We're going to start with the unemployment problem, look at how we break those barriers, explain the Karam economy, calculate fair compensation, go over worker justice, and finally, look at a true universal work engine.
I want to start off with a thought experiment. Think about this for a second. What if unemployment wasn't a lack of work, but a wall of gatekeepers? We so often treat unemployment as a personal failure, or just a simple lack of jobs in the market. But our sources challenge this premise entirely. They argue that the work is always there, but the systems built to access it are profoundly broken. Kicking things off with Section 1, the unemployment problem, and specifically, that wall of gatekeepers.
I really want us to pause and think about underprivileged job seekers worldwide. You know, unemployment exists because our traditional economies are built on these exact constraints. There are arbitrarily limited job positions. You've got HR gatekeepers, incredibly slow hiring cycles, and degree requirements that inherently lock out folks who just don't have the capital to afford higher education. Then you have geographic limitations. Literally, where you were born dictates what you can earn. And ultimately, you have companies arbitrarily deciding who deserves the dignity of work. It creates an impenetrable wall for millions of people.
So how do we fix it? Let's move to Section 2, breaking traditional barriers by removing permission-based work.
The contrast here is literally day and night. The old world relies on limited jobs, borders, and degrees. But in the architecture of Akromna Bank, you don't need a company to hire you. You don't need a CV, you don't need a degree, and most importantly, you do not need permission. There are no HR rejections, no visa requirements, and no background discrimination. It operates on a beautifully simple premise. If you can provide a service, whether that's cleaning, coding, tutoring, or repairs, you can earn immediately. For an underprivileged worker in a developing nation, this means the geographic lottery of birth no longer blocks them from earning. Anyone can request a service, which automatically creates infinite demand.
And because there are no gatekeepers, there are absolutely no limits. If someone wants to work 2 hours a week, 20 hours, or 200 hours, they can. The system never blocks them. There are no monthly caps or employer dependencies. Furthermore, the platform features this multi-user allocation system, where a company could theoretically hire one person or 1,000 people and pay them all in one single click. It transforms the whole concept from a simple gig app into a massive, borderless global payroll engine.
Okay, so how does this actually function without devolving into chaos? Let's dive into Section 3, the Karam Economy Explained, focusing on a currency based strictly on service.
The absolutely crucial point is understanding the currency that powers the whole thing, the Karam Service Bond, or KSB. This isn't just digital money. It's an alternative to national currencies with a very strict core value. It is based entirely on fair service compensation. The absolute cornerstone of this architecture is a creation constraint. The system fundamentally prevents the creation of Karam except through verified service. You can't just conjure it out of thin air. It literally must represent actual human labor and service.
10,000. That number right there is the heartbeat of the global equilibrium within Akramna Bank. The system sets a standard where 10,000 Karam equals the basic monthly living expenses of the user's specific country. This is huge because it anchors the digital currency to real-world survival and dignity. It ensures that compensation is always meaningful relative to where the worker actually lives.
Now this is where it brilliantly bridges the digital divide. Specifically for underprivileged populations who might not have constant access to smartphones or digital banking, users with a positive balance can actually generate and print a physical Karam service bond. This physical document can then be handed over to buy goods or services entirely outside the digital system. The receiver simply enters the bond's uniquely encrypted hash into their own account to redeem the value. It so elegantly makes the digital economy tangible and accessible to absolutely everyone.
Let's look at how we actually ensure people are paid fairly in Section 4, Calculating Fair Compensation. In traditional markets, employers often dictate wages based on how little someone is willing to accept. It's a race to the bottom. Akram replaces that with structural math. When someone requests a custom service, they must define a hardship tier up front. Easy correlates to the 10,000 standard, medium is 20,000, and hard is 30,000. This acknowledges that not all labor takes the same toll on the human body or mind.
Once that hardship tier is set, the system uses this exact formula to guarantee fair pay. It takes the hardship level, divided by 80, multiplies it by the actual working hours, and adds any material costs. And here's a massively important detail. Those actual working hours are defined up front by the requester. There is no live timing counter ticking away to pressure the worker. This system enforces fair pricing, which means there is absolutely zero room for underpayment, exploitation, or wage theft. It creates a genuinely fair labor market.
Of course, an economic engine is only as good as its protections. That brings us to Section 5, Worker Protection and Justice.
So how does a vulnerable worker actually secure their payment? It follows a very strict workflow. First, the requester defines the hours and hardship up front. Second, before starting, the service provider has to present a physical national ID or passport to the requester to establish clear identity. Then they complete the service. Third, the requester hits a manual trigger to confirm fulfillment and release the digital funds. But you might be wondering, what happens if the requester just refuses to pay?
Well, this is where the platform's assigned judicial system steps in. If a dispute is reported, it triggers a review by a human judge. And importantly, users cannot just pick a judge who might be friendly to them. They are assigned by the admin panel. If a requester disappears or refuses to confirm valid work, the judge can authorize the system to directly deduct the funds from the non-payer's account. And if a user commits fraud and falls into a negative balance, they have to clear that debt through actual verified service. It actively, completely eliminates unpaid invoices and delayed payments.
Zooming out to the macroeconomic level, the system makes sure it operates harmoniously within national structures too. There's a transparent 20% monthly tax on the platform, split between a platform service fee and a national fund. The allocations to government funds are required to be publicly visible, ensuring total transparency and collaboration with existing state infrastructures.
Let's pull all of this together in our final section, a universal work engine. As our sources explicitly point out, Akramna is not just some gig app. It's a universal work engine. It supports freelancers, traditional 9-to-5 employees, entire teams, and companies. It handles complex multi-user allocations for shareholders splitting business profits. It works for delivery drivers, developers, teachers, creators, literally anyone. Because there are no gatekeepers, no one is left behind. It truly bridges the gap between massive corporate infrastructures and the everyday, underprivileged worker who is just looking for a fair chance.
And the whole system remains stable through some really smart, equitable liquidity rules. When users want to exchange their Karam for fiat currency, they draw from what is called the Public Exchange Budget, or PEB. To prevent a run on the bank and ensure fairness, the withdrawal limits are mathematically equitable.
It's simply the user's percentage of global carom multiplied by the available PEEB. Everyone gets fair access to liquidity based on their exact proportion of service.
I want to read this quote from the source material because it really hits the nail on the head. You didn't build a bank, you built a global employment system powered by fairness, transparency, and service. It creates a world where anyone can participate, and the historic barriers that have kept underprivileged populations from earning a living are systematically dismantled.
So I want to leave you with this thought. In a world where anyone can serve and earn without permission, without gatekeepers, without those arbitrary limits, what barrier will you break first? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep learning, keep questioning the systems around you, and I will see you next time.
Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving straight into an incredibly ambitious pitch deck for a project called Alattas. It's an initiative aiming to become literally the world's first unified global civic operating system. So just imagine for a second, what if a single platform was designed to integrate all of our essential civic duties and services right into one place? It's a massive question, but it perfectly sets the stage for everything Alattas is trying to achieve. Here is our roadmap for today. We're going to cover the global civic problem, the unified Alattas solution, technology and operations, financial projections and profit, and finally, the early-stage ownership opportunity. Let's jump in. Section 1, the global civic problem. Think about it. Right now, the tools we use for governance, health, and just general social connection are completely scattered all over the place. We're constantly dealing with fragmented justice systems, slow emergency responses, and totally unsafe social media. Plus, there's no transparent peer-to-peer economy. Alattas argues that this fragmentation is creating massive systemic inefficiencies across the globe. Section 2, the unified Alattas solution. To solve this, Alattas pitches a really striking vision of centralized authority. They want to build a map-based, AI-powered platform that integrates literally everything. We're talking justice guardian groups, hospital management, doctor consultations, and even crowd investment. It's essentially pitched as a one-stop shop for world peace and civic duty. So instead of jumping between dozens of isolated, fragmented apps, users would rely on a single real-time map. This map would show you everything from emergency alerts to local job offers, and the whole thing is anchored by a community-driven book of agreement and a totally transparent peer-to-peer economy. It's a total paradigm shift from the status quo. Section 3, technology and operations. To build a foundation this expansive, you absolutely need scale. Under the hood, Alattas relies on highly feasible, scalable cloud microservices from Google. They pair Google Cloud Console and Firebase for the database with Google AI Studio to automate moderation and handle global translation. Then, Google Apps APIs handle the real-time news pinning and geolocation. It's a very modern, cloud-native approach. But here is the truly wild part. They project managing this entire global operation with a remarkably lean, 8-person core team based in their Jeddah headquarters. You've got the CEO and an assistant guiding the vision, alongside dedicated 2-person teams for operations, content, and finance. Keeping the core team this small keeps their operational overhead incredibly low. Section 4, financial projections and profit. Okay, pay close attention here, because the contrast is staggering. $1.75 million. That is the incredibly low estimated total project cost to run Alattas over 5 entire years. Thanks to that scalable cloud architecture and lean 8-person team we just talked about, they expect to keep expenses to an absolute bare minimum. But then, look at the flip side. They are projecting a massive net profit of over $90 million within those same 5 years. That is an absolutely enormous potential return on a $1.75 million cost base. So how do they get there? Well, this huge profit margin is driven by a recurring microtransaction model. They plan to charge just $4 monthly for content subscriptions or ad fees, a $56 one-time fee for project elections, and the platform takes a 1% share on projects. By targeting an 18.2% monthly user growth rate, they only need to capture a tiny fraction of the global population to hit that $90 million mark. Section 5, Early Stage Ownership Opportunity. Now let's dive into the core focus of this pitch. The Alattas platform is currently in an early development stage, which means the doors are open. Ground floor opportunities are actively available right now for both investors and coworkers to get involved. The pitch offers radical transparency on exactly how the equity is split. 25% goes to the project itself for sustainability, to maintain that 18.2% growth. Investors are offered 20% ownership for a $14.5 million buy-in. The founder retains a 10% inheritable share for their family, and the currently elected CEO holds 10%. Interestingly, a massive 30% is dedicated to part-time employees, specifically 6 or more members getting an equal share that becomes permanent after 5 years. The final 5% is reserved for platform rewards. You can really tell this isn't just a standard corporate structure, it's a personal mission. The deck explicitly notes that the founder receives $2.9 million of that investment allocation, but it heavily emphasizes that absolutely everyone, investors and coworkers alike, is welcome to make an offer. While day-to-day decisions are guided by the founder and elected CEO, the pitch states that, ultimately, after God's will, the majority decision of stakeholders and the public serves as the highest authority. The source material ends with a very direct, open call to action. If you're looking to help bring this unified civic platform to life, the founder invites you to reach out directly via email at amrelyon@gmail.com. So, given that $90+ million profit projection, the incredibly lean $1.75 million cost base, and the incredibly grand mission to unite the globe through a single map-based platform, the only question left is whether you see yourself stepping into this early-stage opportunity. Will you be part of the operating system that hopes to shape the future of global civic collaboration? All right, let's jump right in. Today's explainer is digging into a seriously fascinating source document, the complete Mahdi-aligned leadership and mission file. What makes this text so compelling is how it outlines this massive, highly structured global infrastructure project, but it runs totally parallel to deeply rooted prophetic claims. And honestly, no matter what your background is, the way this document separates a religious title from practical boots-on-the-ground global action, it's literally a masterclass in framing a global service mission. To get a real grip on this text, here's our agenda. We'll start with a mission rooted in justice, then look at the practical global project, dive into alignment and documented evidence, check out global recognition and support, and wrap up with progress beyond the title. So, kicking things off with Section 1, a mission rooted in justice, addressing the global baseline. You know, every great project has to start by pinpointing the exact problem it's trying to solve, right? Well, the author here doesn't kick off with mystical claims. Instead, they hit us with a really stark, pragmatic look at reality. The text acknowledges that our current baseline is pretty grim. Humanity is dealing with rampant inequality, confusion, and failing systems that just don't protect the vulnerable. To counter all of that, the mission goal is laid out plain and simple: accessible justice, wiping out oppression, and establishing what the author calls a guaranteed ease of living. Notice how incredibly tangible these are. We're talking about real, everyday improvements for community governance, not just abstract spiritual ideas. And building on that, the text goes straight after the systemic rot we see around us. The author argues that the core mission isn't just about applying band-aids. It's about fundamentally replacing global corruption, division, and chaos with a brand new reality, one that's entirely built on unity, transparency, and fairness. It's a direct structural overwrite. The source material makes it super clear. You can't just patch up a broken system. You have to actively construct a transparent framework to completely replace the corrupt one. Moving right along to Section 2, the practical global project, tangible infrastructure goals. The author is incredibly adamant here. They explicitly state this project is not symbolic, not theoretical, not abstract. This is a massive pivot in the document. It's basically telling the reader to stop looking at this as some sort of theological event and start seeing it as a hard structural initiative. The author is putting their foot down, declaring that they are building a real, measurable platform designed to actually function in the real world. When you look at the actual goals, it's obvious the focus is heavily weighted toward tangible improvements. I mean, look at this list. End oppression, unify communities, improve governance, support justice, simplify life. It reads a lot more like a charter for a massive international humanitarian organization, doesn't it? The author really wants us to grasp that this project is about empowering everyday people and creating real transparency in how the world operates on a day-to-day, practical level. Okay, this next part. This juxtaposition is arguably the absolute core of the entire document. The author makes the case that this project has standalone value that benefits humanity, completely independent of any religious or eschatological claims. Essentially, the text says, look, if I am not the Mahdi, this project still ends oppression and helps everyone. But if I am the Mahdi, then this project is the exact mechanism, the literal tool to deliver that promised justice. It's brilliant because it completely neutralizes any debate over titles by focusing 100% on the undeniable practical benefits of the action itself. Which brings us to Section 3, Alignment and Documented Evidence, the 8-point file. So how exactly does the author connect ancient religious tradition to modern documented reality? Well, the text maps the accepted criteria of the Mahdi, straight from historical Hadith literature to specific, documented biographical evidence. The prophecy requires the person's name to match the prophet's name, their father's name to match, and ancestry linking back to the Ahlul Bayt. Then the author neutrally lists their own alignment. Their name is Mohammed, their father is Abdullah, and they hold 2 physical documents proving their lineage. Notice how it's presented, not as some mystical lightning bolt revelation, but as a straightforward, check-the-boxes list of documented facts. Building on that personal lineage, the text lays out the next logical steps of evidence. The argument here is that fulfilling a prophecy isn't just about who you are on paper. It's about what you actually do. So the existence of a mission of justice, the physical construction of a global project, the global recognition it's currently receiving, and worldwide support, these actions are presented as fulfilling the remaining prophetic requirements. The author is effectively saying, don't just look at my name. Look at the infrastructure being built. That is your evidence. Wrapping up this 8-point evidence file, the document highlights the highly public nature of this work. The author points to a fully explained YouTube presence, which satisfies the historical criteria that this figure will be known. And finally, it brings up a form of divine confirmation based on the idea that everyone gets what they seek. Because the author actively sought out this exact mission of justice described in the texts, the physical manifestation of the project itself is viewed as the ultimate confirmation. All right, let's look at Section 4, Global Recognition and Support, Observation over Proclamation. The author introduces this really fascinating concept here called silent recognition. The text claims that the author is actually already recognized on a global scale, but not through big, flashy public announcements. Instead, it's happening through global observation and monitoring by world leaders and institutions. And the document frames this not as a lack of support, but as strategic acknowledgement. It argues that massive, world-shifting projects are almost always evaluated and recognized privately by those in power way before they ever go public. So it's framed as a sign of caution and ultimately deep respect from the global establishment. So when the text finally issues a call for support, it's really interesting because it doesn't demand religious conversion at all. Instead, it appeals straight to universal human values. It simply asks people to support the mission because they believe in justice, fairness, unity, progress, better systems, and better living conditions. It frames the entire project as a service mission focused purely on global progress. It's an incredibly inclusive call to action, right? You don't need to share a specific theological belief to want a fairer, more transparent world for everyone. And that brings us to our final section, Section 5, Progress Beyond the Title, the Call to Action. Titles do not build a better world. Actions do. This quote powerfully distills the absolute core of the document. It frames the project, once again, entirely around service and practical execution. It basically renders the whole debate over whether the author holds the literal title of the Mahdi as completely secondary to the actual work getting done. The author is saying, hey, we can debate the title later. Right now, we have oppression to end and real infrastructure to build. It's a remarkably pragmatic approach to a subject that is usually completely dominated by ideology. Ultimately, the stated purpose of this file isn't to force anyone into a belief system. It's to prove that the author is serious, highly organized, and building something very, very real. It proves an alignment with justice that benefits absolutely everyone, regardless of their background or identity. The text totally succeeds in presenting a roadmap where the physical manifestation of fairness and transparency is the ultimate proof of the mission's validity. So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a provocative thought to ponder based on the source material. When it comes down to it, replacing corruption, ending global oppression, and guaranteeing an actual ease of living for humanity, does the title of the leader really matter? Or is the action itself, the tangible infrastructure of justice, the only proof we really need? Thanks so much for exploring this deeply fascinating document with me today.
Welcome to this explainer. Okay, today we are unpacking something genuinely fascinating. It's a documented architectural roadmap for navigating some incredibly complex administrative and legal hurdles. We're looking at what is known as the Amrelyon case process of engagement. Now, have you ever wondered what actually happens when a citizen is caught in a decade-long administrative limbo, facing conflicting legal roadblocks and just desperately needing a way out?
Well, the documents we're analyzing today offer an absolute masterclass in highly structured, prioritized escalation. It's essentially a step-by-step guide on exactly how to approach different layers of government, and even international bodies, sequentially to demand clarity and ultimately resolution.
To really wrap our heads around this multi-layered dispute resolution, we're going to break it down into 6 clear steps. The Amrelyon case roadmap, defining institutional goals, Phase 1 medical baseline, Phase 2 diplomatic engagement, Phase 3 legal recourse, and finally, finalizing the strategy. All right, let's dive right into Part 1, the Amrelyon case roadmap.
Look, a decade-long administrative limbo. That is incredibly complex. You've got intertwined agencies, canceled cases. It's literally a mountain of red tape. You can't just knock on one random door and expect a fix. It requires a highly structured strategy, a really strict, prioritized escalation ladder. And I want to be perfectly clear right up front. This explainer doesn't take sides on the underlying dispute. Instead, we're neutrally outlining a citizen's strategic path, exactly as it's documented in the source material. We're going to see how they methodically attempt to resolve these conflicting roadblocks by moving step by step up the chain of authority. Every single move is calculated, and every step serves a very specific purpose in building a comprehensive case file.
Okay, moving on to Section 2, defining the institutional goals.
Before any kind of escalation can even begin, you have to know exactly who you're dealing with and what their precise function is within the wider strategy, right? There are 6 key authorities involved in this complex process, and each one has a highly specific function that dictates exactly when they are engaged. So, starting on the ground, the local police, Al-Nusa, act as the security entity for initial documentation. Then you have the Emirate of Makkah, which is the regional authority you petition for a peaceful review. For specific domains, there's the Ministry of Health for medical baselines, the Human Rights Commission for systemic oversight, and the Ministry of Justice, specifically the Najis system for judicial transparency. And finally, sitting all the way at the very top as an international body is the International Criminal Court, or ICC. Understanding these unique classifications is absolutely vital because you simply cannot ask one entity to do the job of another.
So how are these institutions actually organized? Basically, they're grouped into 3 overarching sequential phases. And this right here is the core prioritization roadmap. You literally cannot jump to Phase 3 without successfully completing Phase 1. One phase unlocks the next, providing the necessary evidence to actually force the higher authorities to engage with the file.
Let's look at that first step. Section 3, Phase 1, the medical baseline.
This is the absolute foundation. According to the strategy outlined in the case, absolutely no legal or diplomatic progress can be made without first establishing undeniable, unified medical facts. This timeline with the Ministry of Health is strictly about resolving conflicting medical diagnoses before you even think about proceeding to higher authorities. It kicks off with a formal request on day 1 for a completely neutral committee. Once formed, this committee conducts comprehensive clinical testing to establish mental and functional stability by day 30. The ultimate end goal of this whole phase, culminating around day 60, is to replace any previously conflicting medical records with a single definitive baseline. Because, without this unified medical document in hand, any subsequent legal claims would likely just be immediately dismissed.
Now, what's really fascinating about this part of the strategy is the sheer precision of the medical request. The citizen doesn't just ask for a general checkup. No, the strategy specifically names rigorous clinical tests, the MOCA, WS5, and MMPI-2. By naming the exact scientific instruments to be used, the strategy ensures the resulting medical baseline is comprehensive, irrefutable, and actually capable of withstanding strict judicial scrutiny later down the line.
Right, which brings us to Section 4, Phase 2, Diplomatic Engagement.
So you've got your irrefutable medical baseline secured. Now what? Well, the newly established facts are brought to regional and oversight authorities. We see a clear ranking of priority over time here. It starts on the ground at time 1 with the local police, Al-Nusa, to formally document the grievances and legally trigger an investigation. Then, at time 2, armed with that police documentation and the medical baseline, the citizen escalates to the regional authority, the Emirate of Makkah. Finally, at time 3, the matter is brought before the Human Rights Commission. You can really see how the citizen strategically moves from basic security documentation steadily upward to seek authoritative and human rights interventions. Engaging the Emirate of Makkah like that is a very deliberate administrative step. By sending formal petitions and letters to them, the strategy is seeking a higher-level, peaceful review. It's essentially an attempt to resolve this decade-long dispute authoritatively before having to enter the highly adversarial environment of a courtroom. It makes sure regional leadership is fully aware of the documented file.
And similarly, consulting the Human Rights Commission serves a very specific strategic function. It acts as an independent oversight check.
The citizen's goal here is to present all the official evidence gathered so far and request the formation of a joint committee. Having an oversight body review systemic administrative concerns adds immense procedural weight to the grievance before hitting that final escalation phase.
Let's move on and see how this all builds into Section 5, Phase 3, Legal Recourse.
So this is the final, most severe level of the escalation ladder, and it's only activated after all those diplomatic and administrative avenues have been fully documented and exhausted. The Ministry of Justice strategy, specifically regarding the Najaz court filing system, operates on a timeline of cause and effect. It addresses the past by meticulously documenting previously canceled legal cases. It leverages the present by bringing in the newly attained unified medical findings from Phase 1. And it aims for the future by refiling those cases. Now armed with undeniable medical proof, the citizen is in a far stronger position to secure the fundamental right to litigate, seek compensation for damages, and demand transparency regarding exactly why those past cases were canceled in the first place.
At this point, Phase 3 actually splits into two distinct avenues, domestic and international. The domestic avenue, through the Najaz system, is the primary target for securing rights and transparency. The international avenue, specifically the ICC, is strictly designated as a last resort. The documents make it crystal clear that pursuing global accountability only happens if the domestic systems completely fail to process the documented evidence.
To really hammer home why the ICC sits at the absolute top of the escalation ladder, just consider the rigorous prerequisites required. An individual can't just write to the ICC on day one. No way. You have to exhaust all domestic administrative channels. You have to exhaust all domestic legal channels. You must have that unified medical baseline and all the compiled records of the canceled legal cases. Only when every single proceeding step in this entire roadmap has been flawlessly executed and documented can formal submissions be made for global accountability.
All right, bringing it all together now. Section 6, finalizing the escalation strategy.
We have mapped out an incredibly intricate architecture of dispute resolution today, but the true power of the Amrelyon case strategy is in its sequence. Step 1, establish the baseline. Step 2, escalate administratively. Step 3, execute domestic legal action. And Step 4, seek international accountability if required. The crucial point here is that these steps are firmly, undeniably locked. You cannot successfully execute Step 3 at the Ministry of Justice without first securing Step 1 at the Ministry of Health. It's a true masterclass in treating a bureaucratic system like a giant logical puzzle that literally must be solved in perfect order.
Which leaves us with this final thought. When you're facing overwhelming administrative hurdles, the instinct is usually just pure frustration, right? Or maybe chaotic, scattered action. But as this explainer illustrates, methodically mapping out those bureaucratic layers actually turns an insurmountable wall into a staircase. So I have to ask you, how does relying on a structured chronological escalation roadmap fundamentally change the pursuit of accountability? Think about how applying this kind of rigorous step-by-step logic could transform a decade of limbo into undeniable, actionable steps. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and keep learning.
Welcome to the Explainer. Today, we're taking a highly structured, executive-level look at a truly fascinating document. We're talking about a formal blueprint for administrative resolution, authored by Mohammed Abdullah Alattas. Now, you should know right off the bat, this isn't just some casual piece of writing. It's meticulously constructed as a formal proposal, specifically intended for review by government officials and administrative bodies. Our goal here today is to objectively break down the architecture of this document, examine the claims it presents, and look at the highly specific resolutions it demands.
Okay, let's dive into this. Right out of the gate, the author frames the entire context of his proposal with a powerful statement. He explicitly states that this is not a personal grievance. Instead, he positions his experience as an objective, measurable breakdown of administrative and governmental systems. By defining it this way, he's putting the responsibility squarely on the systems themselves, arguing that this whole situation requires formal, structural attention rather than just personal mediation.
So the proposal follows a highly structured flow. We're going to walk through Section 1, the formal notice, Section 2, decade of systemic failures, Section 3, proof of capability, Section 4, proposed global reform systems, and finally, Section 5, path to peaceful resolution.
Let's kick things off with Section 1, the formal notice. Setting a very grave and administrative tone for the entire document, the text opens with a broad, formal address to whom it may concern. This immediately signals that the author is putting all relevant parties and authorities on notice. The premise he establishes here is severe. He asserts that a specific situation has remained entirely unresolved for more than 10 years. And according to the text, this isn't just isolated to one area of his life. He claims these administrative failures have comprehensively impacted him medically, legally, socially, and economically.
Moving right along to Section 2, Decade of Systemic Failures. So the crucial point is that he doesn't just offer a vague complaint here. He provides a very specific inventory of administrative breakdowns. Over a 10-year period, the document claims he endured conflicting and contradictory medical reports, legal cases that were simply canceled without any explanation whatsoever, a pervasive administrative silence, severe economic deprivation, and ongoing concerns regarding surveillance and the misuse of authority.
Furthermore, the document draws a direct line between these listed systemic failures and the severe personal toll they've taken. The author asserts that these conditions literally stripped him of the ability to build a normal life or meet basic human milestones, like working or getting married. It's presented as a measurable loss of opportunity and a source of long-term harm to his overall well-being, which really sets the foundation for the resolution he demands later on.
Which brings us to Section 3, Proof of Capability.
Now, making a fascinating shift in the narrative, the author presents his response as evidence. He directly tackles the issue of conflicting medical reports we mentioned earlier by using his own subsequent work to assert full mental stability and high intellectual capability. He states that his resume, his projects, and his documented work stand as irrefutable, objective proof of his competence.
And what makes this section of the proposal particularly striking is the context in which he claims to have produced this work. The document notes that his solutions were engineered completely independently. We're talking no financial funding, absolutely zero institutional support, and all while enduring the extreme personal and economic hardships he just outlined. It's through this immense output under intense pressure that he asserts his identity, not as a victim of instability, but as a world-level systems architect.
Let's look at what he actually built in Section 4, Proposed Global Reform Systems.
And this brilliantly illustrates the direct correlation we're talking about. These proposed architectural frameworks are the core evidence the author submits to officials to prove his capability. What's truly compelling here is how each solution corresponds directly to a specific failure he experienced. For example, look at the economic deprivation he's suffered. That is answered directly by his engineered response, Ackerman, a bank. He didn't just complain about his inability to work. The document states he designed a comprehensive global economic reform system to fix the very conditions that harmed him.
The document defines a crewman bank as a complete economic model intended to eliminate poverty, unemployment, and systemic financial instability altogether. Impartially speaking, the author's claim here is incredibly bold. He's stating that the design of this model proves he can run an economy more effectively than the government systems that failed him.
We see a second major correlation pop up right after that. He answers the administrative silence, canceled cases, and obstructed justice he experienced with a blueprint for a completely open global governance platform, which he calls the Almas platform.
According to the proposal, the Alattas platform is a system designed to connect the world globally. It's built to gather public voices, enable democratic voting, and, absolutely critically, ensure justice through strict due process. It is explicitly framed as a structural solution to the exact infrastructural failures that obstructed his own case.
Then we have a third juxtaposition, which addresses claims of abuse of authority. To counter his stated experiences with surveillance and institutional misuse of power, the author designed Almadir, a strict chain-of-command reform system.
The document defines Almadir as a governance model built from the ground up to prevent the execution of illegal orders, unauthorized spying, and the general abuse of power. Again, you can see the author's logic is highly structured here. He experienced a specific systemic flaw, and he engineered a specific systemic patch to neutralize it.
Finally, the proposal outlines the civilization curriculum. This is described as a complete educational framework, one the author claims is vastly more advanced than what current universities offer. He includes this, along with several other unlisted social and economic solutions, as the ultimate, undeniable proof of his global-scale intellectual capability.
Let's move to and see how this builds into Section 5, Path to Peaceful Resolution.
Having proven his capability, the author now presents his path forward to reviewing authorities. The tone of the document here is calm, yet incredibly firm. He states objectively that he has already exhausted every reasonable domestic step available to him, asserting that all relevant parties are fully aware of the situation and the consequences of continued inaction.
Therefore, at this stage, he declares his basic rights are simply non-negotiable. He makes it crystal clear. He is not seeking conflict. He is strictly seeking administrative justice.
To achieve that peaceful administrative resolution, the document lays out 4 exact, actionable demands for the reviewing officials. Number 1, the formal correction of the administrative failures that caused a decade of suffering. Number 2, the restoration of his rights, allowing him to live and work without obstruction. Number 3, an official acknowledgement of and reconciliation for the harm caused. And number 4, administrative support for the very projects he designed, recognizing their immense value to society.
I am seeking justice, correction, and the ease of living that every human being is entitled to. You know, this quote perfectly summarizes the core human element driving what is otherwise a highly structured analytical document. Beyond the global systems and the complex architectural frameworks, the author is really just reminding the officials reading this proposal of the fundamental baseline human rights being requested: justice, correction, and the simple ease of a normal life.
Which leaves us to ponder the final implications of the Amrelyon case. We're looking at a document asserting 10 years of severe institutional breakdown, answered not with mere complaint, but with engineered, global-scale solutions. It begs a truly fascinating question for policymakers and viewers alike. How should administrative bodies respond when a citizen answers a decade of systemic failure with a blueprint for global systemic reform? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. I really hope this breakdown has been as fascinating to you as it has been for me.
4 years of vision, one blueprint for the nation, spiritual foundation, total transformation. Let's go, let's go. Let's go, let's go, let's go. 2 hours for the soul when the morning is new. Reading through the scrolls, the ancient and true Quran, Torah gospel, memorize the line, boot on my rum, let the wisdom align. Study al-Baghawi, the exegesis is deep, while the rest of the world is still lost in their sleep. From creation start to the companion's light, building a heart that stands firm in the night. This is the plan, the map to the goal, training the mind, the body and soul, from the dirt on the ground to the stars up above. Building a world out of labor and love, with a hand that is busy and a mind that is free. The best version of life that we ever will see. Let's go, let's go, let's go. 1 hour for the science, 5 days on the clock. Building up the knowledge, block by block, from the grammar of tongues to the surgeon's blade. Architecting futures, we are never afraid. We got AI, robotics in the cloud and the sky. Managing the markets with a sharp, steady eye, from the factory floor to the nurse in the pain. Turning every effort into collective gain. 4 hours of labor, where the theory meets real, local and global. We're turning the wheel in 2 hours of power to sharpen the frame. Cardio and muscle, putting fire in the name. I'm writing the songs and I'm telling the tale, with a plan that's gone, I can never fail. Public speaking the truth, it's a work of art, with the strength of the body and the light of the heart. 4 years on the path, a future so grand, with the tool in the book held tight in the hand. If God wills, we're walking into the light, from the break of the dawn to the middle of night.
Listen closely. The 40-hour workweek is a relic. It's a thief that steals your health, your mind, and your life. It is time for a new standard. Imagine a world where we adopt a 4-hour workday. By doing this, we don't just find balance, we double or triple the job market, ending unemployment forever by sharing the work that needs to be done. But we don't stop there. We use that reclaimed time to build expert citizens. Imagine 3 hours every day dedicated to deep learning and mastery, and 2 hours sharpening your body and your creative spirit. Stop being a cog in a machine and start being an architect of civilization. We are moving from an economy that consumes you to a society that empowers you. Claim your time. Claim your mastery. This is the new standard for a life worth living.